Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar on the new i1pro3. Presenting today is Jay Calbley, the product manager for the i1pro3. We also have Kevin Amat, one of our application support specialists, available to answer some questions and jump in as needed. I'm Robert Grotans, the Global Technical Marketing Manager, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. A few things to go over before we get started. Due to the number of people that are attending today's webinar, we will keep everyone muted. If you have any questions, please use the questions function on the GoToWebinar panel. We'll have time to answer just a few questions at the end. If we don't get to your question, we'll have someone follow up with you afterwards. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a link to it so you can review it later at your convenience. So with that, I will turn it over to Jay to kick things off.
Thanks. So real quick, what we're going to go through today is what's new with the i1pro3. Talk about some of the i1pro3 tools and different models, features and benefits in upgrading and using an i1pro3. And then we'll go through Q&A at the end. i1s have been, i1s are the top selling spectrophotometers in history. There's more i1s out there than all the other spectrophotometers in the market combined. They're used predominantly in the print market with front-end rips, for color profiling, linearization, and there's a lot of applications where people just use them to measure color for different applications in addition to profiling and linearization. New features with the i1pro3. There's a full spectrum LED illumination, so no more tungsten light source. With that, single scan measurement, so you don't have to do one pass for visible, one pass for UV. i1pro3 supports smaller patch sizes, which means more patches per page. Support for automation with the i1IO Generation 3. We've made it a lot easier to clean the device, and i1pro3s also support super high bright displays for measurement. We also added a Kensington lock port to the back of it. So the same kind of locking port that you have on a laptop, so you can secure it if you don't want it to move around. So there's two new models. There's an i1pro3 and an i1pro3 Plus. The i1pro3 Plus is a large aperture device. We hadn't had a large aperture i1 historically. So the standard aperture or normal i1pro3 has a 4.5 millimeter aperture, which is the same as the i1pro2 and the original i1. The i1pro3 Plus has an 8 millimeter aperture, which is pretty gigantic. The i1pro3 Plus also supports polarization. There's a polarization filter that ships with it to allow you to measure in M3. So comparing features between i1pro2, i1pro3, i1pro3 Plus. Again, note the difference in patch sizes. One advantage of the i1pro3 is it can go down to 6 millimeter patches and actually have a higher sampling rate with 6 millimeter patches than it does with 7 millimeter patches on the i1pro2. Maximum luminance support, so for bright displays, is up to 5,000 nits or candela per square meter for both the i1pro3 models. The sampling rate is at 400 hertz, so double what it was for i1pro2. Maximum scan length is the same between the Pro2 and the Pro3, but on the Plus, because it has a large aperture, we've made it much longer. Both the i1pro3 models have a full spectrum LED light source. So with the elimination of the tungsten bulb, you get much more thermal stability in the device because the LEDs don't generate as much heat. As well, you don't get some of the drift issues over time that you get with a tungsten light bulb due to carbon burn or temperature changes. As well, the LEDs don't have a filament burn like a tungsten light bulb would. With that LED light source, we also have single pass scanning. With the i1pro2, if you wanted to scan M1 or M2, you'd have to do one pass for visible spectrum, one pass for UV. With both the i1pro3 models, you get single pass scanning. So it effectively cuts your scan time in half for M1 or M2, which is pretty cool. Easy clean filter, the tubus or the snout on the i1pro3 comes off very easily, and there's a new filter design, so if there is any contamination on your filter glass, you can clean it really quickly and easily. And again, as I mentioned, the i1pro3 Plus also comes with a polarization filter to support polarized measurements. i1pro3 Plus also supports transmission scanning, so if you want to work with backlit materials, you can do that with the i1pro3 Plus. All the i1 devices support what we call virtual aperture technology. So when you're scanning color patches, the i1 will automatically detect a patch and measure inside that patch and average the patches together, giving you effectively a big, long virtual aperture. So the longer your patch size, the more measurements and the more accuracy you're going to get in terms of a homogenized virtual aperture measurement. Another cool improvement with the i1pro3 versus i1pro2 is it measures at 400 hertz. So even with small patches, you're going to get more accurate, more consistent measurements with an i1pro3 because effectively it's doubled. We've doubled the sample rate. Just a summary of the patch sizes. With i1pro3 standard aperture, where we've enabled 6mm patches, which again means more patches per page, fewer pages to print and scan, and you can scan much quicker because of that. We still have the same licensing structure as we did with the i1pro2. So there's an i1 Basic, i1 Photo, and i1 Publish. The i1 Basic comes with licenses in the device for printer QA and display calibration. The Photo adds licenses for RGB printer support. And then the i1 Publish has the full licensing setup, which includes RGB, CMYK Plus printer, display, printer QA, pretty much everything. If you have an existing i1pro2 or original i1 and it's a publish mode and has all the licenses in it, you don't need to buy another publish device. You can buy an i1 Basic Pro 3 or i1 Basic Pro 3 Plus and transfer the licenses right in i1 Profiler. You just plug in your original i1, plug in your new i1 Pro 3, or sorry, i1 Pro 2, and your i1 Pro 3 and transfer licenses. There's a transfer license function circled in red on the right there, and that would do that for you. If you have an original i1, you need to contact our application support team, and they can help you transfer the licenses. So go through some of the cool new features. Again, the full spectrum LED light source is a big deal. It enables much better device reliability, much better repeatability, measurement to measurement, much more accuracy. As well, it's more robust than a tungsten light source, and it's what gives us the capability to have single pass scanning, which cuts your scan times in half as well. So again, single pass scanning, instead of having to do one pass for visible, one pass for UV, it gets it all in one pass, which is a huge time saver. And this is true when you use it on an IO as well. Smaller patch sizes, again, more patches per target. More patches per page means, like it says, less media burn, a much faster workflow. The i1, an i1pro2, i1pro3 have what I think is probably the most elegant automation solution in the market. It's the IO table. The IO table is what we call a SCARA arm or robot arm that allows you to put your i1 in it and have it automatically measure targets for profiling or linearization, whatever you want. The new version of the IO table, the i1io3, has been re-engineered to be much more accurate and reliable long term. The io3 table is only usable with the i1 Pro 3 and i1 Pro 3 Plus. So if you have an i1 Pro 2 and you want an i1 Pro 3 with an I/O table, there's not an upgrade path because of all the changes we've made. You'd need to buy a new I/O table. Let me back up on this. If you're used to the I/O, you'll note the glider rings that are in it. When we ship the I/O 3s, they come with glider rings for the i1 Pro 3 Plus as well as the i1 Pro 3. Here's a shot of the new tubus and filter design. You see the little lock icons there. You just rotate the snout or the tubus of the device to the unlock position, pull it off, and that filter that's being held there also locks into that tubus. So you can pop that out and clean it at any time. Again, for high brightness displays, we'll support displays up to 5,000 nits. Most of the monitors that are out there today aren't close to that, but they're coming into the market. For something like a gaming display, those will go up to 1,250 nits today. There are higher brightness monitors coming out. There are already LFDs up or large format displays up into the 7,000 nit range. But this will cover virtually all displays that are out there today. We are rolling out a trade-in program or trade-up program. It'll go live in the next couple of days on xrighttradein.com. If you have an old i1, whether it's an i1 Pro 2 or original i1, after you go out and buy your new i1 from a authorized X-Rite dealer and fill out the form on xrighttradein.com, and we'll rebate you $300 for the old i1. Same with an I/O table. So if you have an i1 I/O table, Gen 1 or Gen 2, you can get another $300 as part of our trade-up and trade-in program. And that's where we are right now. If there's any questions, we'll take those now. If you need more information, you can go to xrite.com. If you have questions, you can email into CM support or color management support at xrite.com for questions or support.
Yep. So I see one question here already. If you do have a question, feel free to submit one. And again, CM support at xrite.com. Kevin Amat monitors that and his team, so they'll be happy to answer any questions that we don't get to. So one question I see that we got is, will my current i1 I/O work with the i1 Pro 3?
So good question.
No, it will not. As Jay said earlier, the i1 Pro 3s have to be, if you want an automated process, then you'd have to go with the i1 IO3. The i1 IO first generation and IO2 will only work with the i1 Pro 2s and the i1 Pro 1s. So it will, the i1 Pro 3 is dimensionally different, so it won't fit into the i1 IO i1 holder. So the answer is no.
Next question, I think you touched on this a little bit. Someone wants clarity on, is there an upgrade path for the i1 Pro 2 Publish?
Yes. You can, if you get an i1, if you have an i1 Pro 1 or i1 Pro 2 that has Publish or photo licensing, you can buy a i1 Pro 3 basic model, either the Plus or the smaller aperture, and you can just transfer the licensing. Keep in mind that after you transfer the license, you can also trade in the older i1 Pro and get another $300 off. Now, there is not a direct path to transfer licensing from the i1 Pro 1 to all the way up to the i1 Pro 3. There is in the software, you can go from the i1 Pro 2 to the i1 Pro 3. If you have an i1 Pro 1 first generation Rev A through D, and you want to upgrade to an i1 Pro 3 and you want to transfer the licensing, you'd have to contact us at X-Rite Technical Support for us to do a manual transfer with you.
Do you still recommend a yearly recertification?
We do. That's recommended. Yep. Annual recertification.
Do we know how long the trade-in program is going for?
Right now, we've got it scheduled to go through the end of June.
Someone's asking about the inventory status of the new product. Do we currently have it in stock and ready to ship?
Yep, i1pro3 all models and i1pro3 Plus all models are in stock, both in the U.S. and in Europe. The i1pro3s are actually manufactured in our factory in Regensdorf, Switzerland. So, yeah, they're ready to go.
Is there any advantage for display calibration to using the larger 8mm aperture?
Yeah, what we found in applications, just from experimenting with it, is profiling with the large aperture, we seem to be getting much smaller, lower DEs in the display quality after profiling. From our experience in applications, it looks like from gathering more data with each measurement is improving the display profiles using the large aperture.
We'll take one more question for today. When do we expect it to be integrated with other profiling software such as Onyx and Caldera?
So most of the partners that we've been working with for years have had the SDK for it already. I don't know the status of the Onyx integration. For Caldera, the i1pro3 Plus is included in version 13. i1pro3 standard aperture and I/O are scheduled to be included with version 13.1, which is due out the end of this month.
We get this question quite a bit in applications, and we always direct people back to the OEM vendor, back to the software vendor, because number one, a lot of these, or most of them, are paid upgrades, and a lot of people are on different levels. And so directing them back will let them get to the software vendor to find out which version they have to upgrade to when they do add the i1pro3s.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. This was meant to be just a quick overview today. We have a few questions we didn't get to, so I'll send those over to Kevin, and he'll follow up with you offline. Again, thank you for attending today. You will receive a recording so you can see the tables that Jay had on screen and get all of that information. Have a great day, and thanks again.